We are a fourth of the way through the Iowa football season. Doesn't seem possible, but we are. Our MVPs, our top 5 MVPs for what has been a 3-0 start for Iowa. Plus, we take a look back at Kent State, the win that was and the win that moved Iowa to 3-0. And, of course, we'll look forward to Colorado State. All that and much more during week 174 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. This is from the Hawkeye of the Storm.
Are you a Hawkeye fan living in Story County? Do you feel isolated, like you're alone in a maze of red? Well, you're not the only one. And that's why we here at StoryCounty.news have launched a brand new section of our website, From the Hawkeye of the Storm, which will feature our weekly podcast, Brada's Branded Thoughts, as well as other Hawkeye-related content for all you Story County residents who bleed black and gold, or if you live in Western Iowa, Eastern Iowa, or somewhere else other than Ames and you're a Hawkeye fan, we'd love your support. All of our content is free, so again, give our Facebook page a follow, give it a like, and give our Twitter page a follow as well, at From the Hawkeye on Twitter. The more likes, the more follows, the more support we get, the more content we can continue to push out, and it's all free. It's From the Hawkeye of the Storm, hosted by StoryCounty.news, for the best Hawkeye content in the area.
Week 174 of Brada's Branded Thoughts here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. We are talking about a 3-0 start. And who would have guessed that? I don't think many pundits did, and even the biggest homers, I don't believe, predicted 3-0, let alone a win on the road at Iowa State. That, in and of itself, was impressive, and of course we hashed that last week. But we're going to talk about what we've learned so far, and specifically during this show, I want to take a look at my top 5 MVPs so far this season. And no surprise, 0 of those top 5 come from the offensive side of the ball. Now, not an indictment on the offense, but I just could not rank any offensive player ahead of these 5. So we'll get to my top 5 MVPs so far this season here in a few moments. First of all, let's take a look back at Iowa and Kent State. Of course, hopefully, if you haven't already done so, get over to Iowa at the Voice of College Football on YouTube, because you can check out all of our post-game coverage from every Iowa game, win or loss, and we are joined each and every week on that channel by former Iowa coach Don Patterson, and Don brings his A game each and every week. So check out our post-game coverage over there if you haven't already. My overall takeaways from Saturday: the run game looked better. They weren't huge lanes. Tyler Goodson ran the ball well, ran the ball effectively. We learned that Ivory Kelly-Martin has, I think at this point, concerning ball security issues. Kirk Ferentz sort of downplayed his concern with his senior running back during his press conference this week. But there's no question, I mean, he's going to be on a short leash. I thought, I was surprised, to be completely honest, when Kirk let Ivory Kelly-Martin carry the ball after his first fumble on Saturday, because let's remember, Kelly-Martin coughed one up against Indiana. He also coughed one up against Iowa State, although it was called back because the ground caused the fumble. But nonetheless, that just proves Kelly-Martin has some issues right now protecting the football. And you've got to protect the football if you're a ball carrier, especially in the Big Ten Conference. The good news of what we saw on Saturday as far as that running back 2 position, we saw Gavin Williams, young guy out of Des Moines, really come in and play well. Protected the football, runs hard. He's more of that bell cow, bruising type back, and he also caught a pass or 2 out of the backfield. He looked good. We saw LaShawn Williams come in late in the game. He looked solid. Iowa's got options. Running back's not a concern. As far as depth at running back, it was a concern probably prior to fall camp, at least for me, but from what I've heard, again, and some of this is based off of what I've heard from Don Patterson himself, and then, of course, what we saw Saturday, I'm just not concerned with the Williams brothers coming in and spelling Tyler Goodson if need be. Now, Ivory Kelly-Martin has proved he's a solid runner. I think he's ran the ball well. If you look at his numbers, he may have a better average than Tyler Goodson if you take away the big plays of Tyler Goodson. Of course, those inflate Tyler's numbers, but if you take those, 3 big plays from Tyler Goodson, take those away, and I think Ivory Kelly-Martin is running just as well, if not better, than Tyler Goodson. The difference is Tyler is protecting the football right now, and Kelly Martin is not. So that's a concern. Do we see Gavin Williams start Saturday? Do we see LaShawn Williams get some snaps as well? I think we'll see Ivory Kelly Martin, at least initially. I would not be surprised to see Gavin Williams get some work. I mean, why not? Obviously, Ivory Kelly Martin has to prove himself during practice, and hopefully he's doing that right now as we record this podcast. But again, there are concerns, no question, at that running back position. Tyler Goodson, again, ran the ball well. Let's take a look back at the numbers for Iowa, because obviously offense has been the topic of conversation for most people because it's been a struggle. And there's no question, it's been a struggle for the Hawkeyes 3 games in. And of course, these first 2 games against very solid defensive fronts, especially Iowa State. But Iowa did rush the ball for 206 yards. Okay, that's a healthy number against anybody. Again, we get it. We're playing, you're playing a MAC opponent. I think this is probably one of the better teams in the MAC, but it is still a MAC opponent. Yards per pass attempt, under 6 yards per pass attempt. That's atrocious. I made the comparison after the game that it looked a little bit Greg Davis-y, and I don't think that's by design. I think part of it is by design because I don't think this coaching staff, and this is something that Don Patterson agrees with, that this coaching staff does not have a lot of faith in Spencer Petras right now. As much as they want to tell you they've got a lot of faith in Spencer, they don't have a lot of faith in Spencer. They have enough faith in Spencer to play Spencer over Alex Padilla and Deuce Hogan, but we're not seeing many go routes. We're not seeing anything as far as many intricate designs from a passing standpoint, and I think that's a sign that the ceiling right now is high for Spencer given his intangibles. He's got a big arm. He's a pro-style quarterback. He fits in well with the Iowa system, but he's not seeing the field like you'd hoped he would be at this point. There's just no question. I can't sugarcoat that. He's not seeing the field like you want him to. I hear fans every week say, well, he's missing guys. At the game, I see open players on the field. I don't question that at all because, we saw that last year from Spencer, and we hope for a bigger jump than what we've gotten. Now, can he make improvement? Can he connect on some deep balls? I think Spencer has an accurate arm for the most part. He does miss simple throws. It's kind of odd, and Don brought this up this week. He will overthrow out routes. I mean, simple 5-and-out routes routinely, and that's odd. I don't know what the reason for that is. It does seem like Spencer is very much, I don't want to say controlled, but guided by the mental aspect of being a quarterback, and I mean by that Spencer seems to either be in a flow or he's not, and sometimes it snowballs on him. You'll see him kind of clap his hands when he makes a bad pass, and you just feel like he's not always locked in. He obviously gets jittery. We see that. Nerves seem to play a role. Again, we're at a point now where he's been on the road at Iowa State. He played Indiana at Rock. I mean, I don't think there's going to be environments. I mean, if you lasted in that Iowa State game, I think he'll be just fine. That was honestly, it was okay. I thought he played okay against Iowa State. What did he get, like 110 passing yards? But he didn't turn the ball over, and he did have a nice drive or two in that game. But again, as it relates to Kent State, the running game looked better. That should help Spencer. We didn't see much from Charlie Jones. We did see Tyrone Tracy get involved. Tracy ended up on the day with 5 catches for 43 yards. Now, big play threats just aren't there right now. Sam Laporte ended up with 65 yards on 7 catches. Okay, Nico Reganey did have a 48-yard catch and run. That's about the extent of big plays for Iowa on Saturday. They've got to throw the ball down the field. I know we've been saying that forever. We continue to say it year after year, but I say it more now with this quarterback because Nate Stanley at least showed the ability to do so, as did just about every quarterback that I can think of besides James Vandenberg, and much of Vandenberg's issues, I think, were coach design, route trees, etc. But nonetheless, Iowa's got to get the ball downfield. The running game helps. I said that last week. If they could get the running game going, that opens up play action. I did not think, and this is a critique of Brian Ferentz, I'm no coach myself, but my opinion on Brian is that I didn't think Brian involved play action enough on Saturday, and maybe he's saving that. I don't think coaches do that typically, but what do I know? I thought they could have used a little bit more play action and given Spencer some opportunities to throw deep, but at the same time, Iowa didn't really get away from Kent State until late in that third quarter. I mean, it was potentially going to be a 2-point game had that fumble not occurred near the goal line that Riley Moss recovered. So Iowa's in an interesting position here. The run game looked better. Pass game, I didn't see much improvement at all, to be completely honest with you. I said that during the post-game show. But the run game did look better. Does it have room for improvement still? Yes. Kyler Schott played this last week, but it was his first game back after a broken foot. He's going to have to get his feet under him. This is a good opportunity this week against Colorado State to do so. As far as the defense is concerned, solid again. You give up 7 points. I don't care who you're playing. Obviously a solid day. Riley Moss is going to get picked on. He got picked on a couple times, got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, as some of our listeners like to say, a couple times. And he's going to have to be careful. We saw that against Indiana, that he took advantage of a couple poor decisions from Michael Penix. But you're not going to get away with that every week. And if you try to jump a route or you get your eyes caught in the backfield, you're going to get burned. And the Kent State receiver, let me pull up his name here. Abram, 6 catches, 138 yards. He burned Moss on a couple of different routes, and then he burned Dane Belton. Got inside leverage and killed him for a touchdown. So, there are things to work on if you're Phil Parker in this defense. And boy, I don't want to say that was a lucky play. I don't believe in luck personally, but the fumble at the goal line, that was just a bonehead play, all right, by the ball carrier for Kent State. And Riley Moss, give him credit. Give Justin Jacobs credit. He was in on the play. Jack Campbell was in on that play as well. But Iowa got away with one there. The defense still looks solid. I mean, there's no question about it. Again, we're trying to rate this team based on a MAC performance. But again, 3-0, and they have not allowed more than 17 points this season. And in the other 2 games, they allowed 6 and 7, respectively. So far, so good from a defensive standpoint. We keep saying that week after week. Obviously, they'll be tested more in the coming weeks. Let's talk about my top 5 MVPs so far this season for Iowa football. And some of these may surprise you, all right? These are not going to be your mainstream MVPs. Now, I mentioned beforehand, I do not have a single offensive player in my top 5, all right? Again, not an indictment on the offense to say that nobody can emerge. And, Charlie Jones has been good. Tyler Goodson has been good. Obviously, Tyler Linderbaum, he's going to be good, and he's been solid. But I just, as far as MVP so far, I'm not going to rate any of those guys ahead of who I have on this list. So let's talk about my top 5. Let's start with number 5. And fittingly enough, we land on number 5, Justin Jacobs. So he's number 5 on my list, and he's number 5 on the football field. Justin has played exceptionally well. You think back, his biggest play of the year, no question, has been the forced fumble on Breece Hall against Iowa State. And what a play. I mean, you see him here just manhandling Chase Allen, this amazing tight end for Iowa State. And again, I'm not the one calling him amazing. Other people have done that. And he's a solid tight end. There's no question. I think he's got an opportunity at the next level. But Justin Jacobs threw him aside like a rag doll on this play. What a play. And then, of course, in the second quarter, I believe it was, against Iowa State, the terrific pass coverage on Charlie Kolar, the better of the 2 tight ends for Iowa State. Just tremendous out of a linebacker who's playing up against a really big and really exceptional pass catcher in Kolar. And again, just a huge play in this game. And we've seen Justin look solid in run defense as well. It's hard to keep him off the field right now. I mean, you've got 3 linebackers who I think Iowa has a lot of faith in Campbell, Benson, and Jacobs. So it'll be interesting to see how much Phil Parker tweaks this defense, because who do you take off the field? Do you take Dane Belton off, who's your primary cash guy, or do you take Kayvon Merriweather off the field? That will be interesting to see. Let's go to number 4 on my list, my top 5 MVPs so far through 25% of the season, Matt Hankins. Matt Hankins hasn't had the spotlight on him a lot of this season if you throw out the 2 interceptions against Iowa State, but there's a reason for that. He is really playing good coverage right now. Of course, the interception on Brock Purdy covering Xavier Hutchinson, very solid performance against Iowa State. He actually had 2 picks in that game and an impressive return on one of those interceptions. And again, we saw Riley Moss be picked on last week. We didn't hear much of anything from Matt Hankins. And if you're a cornerback, you kind of like to play under the radar, kind of like an offensive lineman would. If your name's not heard, that's typically good. Obviously, you like interceptions and being in the spotlight in that regard, but Not hearing from Matt Hankins is a good thing. He has been exceptional at cornerback. And Riley Moss has been good at times, but again, he showed some vulnerability this past week, and we'll see if it all comes back to bite Iowa in the coming games. Number 3, and this one may surprise you, but it should not. Jack Kerner at safety. I flash back to, again, a play against Iowa State. A tackle on Breece Hall in the open field, one of the best running backs in the country in Hall. And Kerner, who's not a real athletic guy, not a real big guy, made an impressive open field tackle, and he has just been solid. Again, doesn't have the tendency to get beat over the top, is just real good in pass coverage when he needs to play one-on-one, although Iowa doesn't ask him to do that a lot. But he just plays the position well. He reminds me a lot of a guy like Brett Greenwood. And he can hit. There's no question about it. So Kerner is my number 3 player on my top 5 MVP list so far this season. Number 2, Joe Evans. This is, again, maybe surprising to some because Evans really, if you look at him from a snap standpoint, I don't have the number of snaps in front of me, but he's not a guy who's taking a ton of snaps this year. I mean, he's playing a lot more than he ever has. But Iowa's also rotating a lot of guys on this defensive line, and I'll mention another guy that I've been impressed with during my honorable mentions. But he's not playing every down. But when he's in there, he's making an impact. We've seen tipped balls. We've seen sacks. We've seen, I think back to that Week 1 game against Indiana and the pressure on Penix that caused the interception that was thrown to Dane Belton. I mean, Joe Evans, undersized guy. I've compared him a little bit to Parker Hesse with a higher motor. Had a fan on YouTube here a few weeks ago compare him to Nate Meyer. I get that comparison wholeheartedly. But he is his own guy, and again, he's a former quarterback. He has made a physical transformation and certainly a huge impact so far this year for Iowa, and expect that moving forward. Again, him and Van Valkenburg on pass rush sets. Man, what a pair there, because they both have energy to no end. And my number 1 MVP so far this season goes to Tory Taylor. How can you go anywhere other than the Iowa punter? So far this season, every time Iowa has traded punts, I should say, Iowa has gained a 14-yard field position advantage. That is huge. We've seen a number of kicks inside the 20, a number of kicks inside the 10, and a number of kicks that have been very close to landing at the 1. Tory is also, he's developed a bigger leg. We've seen some 60-plus yard kicks out of Tory. We saw one kick that could have went a lot more had he gotten a good bounce. I mean, here's a guy who's developed from being that Australian-style punter to being, I don't want to say an American punter because he's still got those Australian roots strong in his blood, you can tell, but boy, he has learned the American-style punt, and he is doing so effectively. He's good at he's really good on every part of the field. He reminds me a lot. Again, I was not alive during this time period, but Reggie Roby, I've watched tape on him and certainly heard plenty about Reggie. Just so versatile as a punter, big leg, but can also kick with extreme precision and accuracy. So again, my top 5 MVPs: number 5, Justin Jacobs at linebacker, Matt Hankins at corner coming in at number 4, number 3, safety Jack Kerner, number 2, defensive end Joe Evans, and number 1, Iowa's punter, Tory Taylor. Honorable mentions that we did not make into our top 5 today. Jack Campbell has been very good. The linebacking core in general. I'd add Seth Benson to that list. Both those guys have been tremendous. This linebacking core is solid. And I'd predicted that heading into the season that they'd be really, really good. And they are really, really good. Riley Moss. I was not going to put him on this list, especially given the fact that he got burned a couple times last week. But let's not forget he had 2 huge picks against Indiana. I mean, huge picks. They were both pick 6s. So you've got to at least put him on the honorable mention list. Caleb Shudak hasn't been a story. He made a huge 50-yard kick against Iowa State that kind of, boy, that was a huge kick in hindsight because Iowa ended up winning that game by 10 points. So that pushed it to pushed another score ahead. And Iowa certainly benefits from his experience. He's got some veteran leadership in him, certainly waiting his turn behind Keith Duncan. Shudak has been solid, and he's booting kickoffs into the end zone. How about this guy, Lucas Van Ness? Here's a name I did not expect to be talking about at this point in the season. He's playing more and more, big number 91. Again, I could see this guy being a starter next year. He's that good, and again, kind of a guy we weren't talking about heading into the season. Lucas Van Ness looking impressive along that defensive line. How about Tyler Goodson? Got to make him an honorable mention. I know we're kind of just going down all these different guys who have contributed, but rightfully so. Goodson's had a couple huge runs, and certainly the big one against Indiana kind of sparked things off for the season, and then last week with the 2 big touchdown runs. And Monty Pottebaum, let's give some love to the fullback. Got banged up at the end of Game 2 against Iowa State, came right back, played well last week, and how can you not show some kudos and respect for an Iowa fullback? So those are my top 5 and my honorable mentions for MVPs so far this season for the Hawkeyes. Let's talk a little bit about Colorado State. Of course, the Rams, the rumors this week are that they are expected to potentially accept an invitation to the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, which of course is losing some of its best teams to the Big 12. And so that's kind of, I don't want to say a distraction for the players, but certainly a storyline nationally. We talked to Kevin Lytle of the Coloradoan during our live segment on Iowa at the Voice of College Football this week on YouTube. And he talked about just the surprise last week was for the Rams with taking down a Toledo team that, let's remember, Toledo nearly beat Notre Dame the week prior, and Colorado State dominated Toledo. Now, a bit of a letdown, maybe, from the Notre Dame game, but they didn't win that Notre Dame game, so you wonder how much of a letdown there could have been. And again, Colorado State was really good. McBride at tight end, one of the best in the business. Kirk Ferentz talked about him this week. He's got, I think, like 300, let me look up the numbers here, like 338 yards. This is a tight end through 3 games. Yeah, McBride's got 339 yards on 30 catches. All right, now put that in perspective. Sam Laporta has been Iowa's best receiver as far as numbers, and it's not even close. He's got 169 total yards, which is, if I'm doing my math right, under half of what McBride has done. Now, again, he's played against an FCS team in South Dakota State. They played in a bottom-tier SEC school in Vanderbilt, lost both of those games, and then played a good MAC team in Toledo. He's going to be a handful, but Justin Jacobs, we talked about him earlier. I think we're going to see more and more of Justin, and I don't want to say less and less of Dane Belton, but we've seen Dane get burned a couple of times in pass coverage against bigger receivers and tight ends. Justin might be the solution there. Sam Laporta is going to have an opportunity to have a big game. We see Spencer continuing to develop every week. It's that connection between him and Laporta seems to strengthen itself. Now, of course, fans are wanting Spencer to develop that chemistry with other receivers. I get it, but we should expect a big game out of Sam. The run game's got to get better. It was good last week. It's got to stay more consistent. Kyler Schott, again, provides some stability on the inside. If Iowa can run for at least 150 yards this weekend, I mean, I'd love to see 200 plus. If they can run for at least 150, they should be fine. Obviously, this is a game Iowa should win. But again, if Iowa's offense can't take a step, and again, they've got Maryland on a short prep week next Friday. If they can't take a step in this game offensively, I'm going to be very nervous heading into the next game. And again, they could very well lose to somebody. If you're not clicking offensively and you're not consistently putting points on the board, at some point, there's a good chance you're going to lose to somebody who you probably shouldn't lose to. Let's hope it's not this week against the Rams. I don't think it will be. My prediction for score on Saturday, I've got Iowa 38, Colorado State 17. I think they score some points against Iowa. McBride, again, at tight end is a mismatch, I think. For the most part, we'll see how Phil Parker schemes things up against him. Centeo's a guy who can scramble at quarterback. Certainly more mobile than Spencer Petras. I do think Iowa's offensive line will be too much for a solid front for Colorado State. And let's just hope we see some passes downfield, at least attempts. Spencer's got to be given the opportunity. I know coaches are probably not seeing much different than what we're seeing in games as far as his ability to see the field and be able to make deep throws, but he's got to at least be given some plays down the field because they're not going to be able to accomplish the goals all fans want them to accomplish this season without the ability to get that ball down the field, whether it be Charlie Jones Tyrone Tracy? Could it be an Arlen Bruce or Keegan Johnson? Could they emerge? They played a little bit more this past week. Each caught a pass, I believe. So storylines this weekend, certainly. And again, Iowa, Colorado State, 2:30 p.m., Fox Sports 1 this Saturday. Of course, we'll be here. We'll be over at Iowa at the Voice of College Football and Big Ten at the Voice of College Football. Those are the two channels we'll be post-gaming live on Saturday. Again, Iowa at the Voice of College Football on YouTube, Big Ten at the Voice of College Football on YouTube. We'll be joined by former Iowa coach Don Patterson, who hops on with us every single week to talk about the games, and will be enjoyable. Iowa looking to move to 4-0 on the season. Thanks for listening to Week 174 of Brada's Branded Thoughts, and from the Hawkeye of the Storm, Iowa, Colorado State this Saturday, we will talk to you soon.